Tennessee This Week from WATE 6 on your side starts now.
Hello and welcome to Tennessee This Week. I'm Bo Williams. Glad you're with us. Last week, Tennessee Democrats revealed their pushback on abortion. State lawmakers from the party say they'll start by trying to roll back newly allowed restrictions, then work to reduce some of the impacts of those laws. This comes in response to the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade, sending the issue now back to the states. Our state had prepared for that decision with laws including a now-in-effect 6-week ban and a soon-to-take-effect trigger law, which will ban nearly all abortions except to prevent the death of or serious injury to the mother. Republicans hold a supermajority in Nashville, so Democrats admit they have little chance of codifying Roe in Tennessee law. So their plan includes efforts around the edges. On the list, clear exceptions for the health and well-being of the mother and for victims of rape, incest, or sex trafficking. Also protections for telehealth and doctors who provide what Democrats call medically sound and appropriate care.
I believe we're looking at a ticking time bomb that's going to go off and create chaos. And we've already seen that with laws that are unclear, physicians who don't really understand the full extent, all of those things. It's already committing chaos.
Last month, Governor Bill Lee's office said he had worked with state lawmakers to pass the maximum protection for preborn children. Lee called the Supreme Court ruling a, quote, historic opportunity to support women, children, and strong families while reconciling the pain and loss caused by Roe v. Wade. Also last week, we learned that inflation in the U.S. hit 9.1%. Why and who's to blame? Well, what we heard from the head of the Boyd Center for Business and Economic Research at UT, there's no one person, policy, or event. Don Bruce says instead it's lots of different things working together to hike prices, from a tight job market pushing up wages to federal stimulus spending to supply chain problems and rising home prices. Bruce expects the Federal Reserve to push interest rates higher again soon. We asked how long until prices come back down.
If we knew that, we'd all be millionaires right now, I think, but it's really hard to predict. My own sense is that we're going to start seeing improvement here in the next couple of months, but it'll be a gradual off-ramp from this inflationary environment. My hope is that we'll get closer to that Federal Reserve target inflation rate of around 2% within the next 12 to 18 months.
You may have heard about Bank of America predicting a recession by year's end. Bruce says if it does happen, he thinks it would be a fairly mild and short-lived recession. Bruce's advice for protecting your bottom line: keep tightening your belt, buy less when you can, or switch to cheaper alternatives. Another group called out Governor Bill Lee last week over comments by the president of Hillsdale College, Larry Arnn. This time, it's the Tennessee Education Association. That teachers group wants Governor Lee to sever ties with Hillsdale and back new limits on the power of the state commission overseeing charter schools. We've shown you teachers protesting on this controversy since a recording was obtained by a Nashville media outlet of comments made by Hillsdale's Larry Arnn, saying that teachers are trained in the dumbest parts of the dumbest colleges in the country. Early this year, Governor Lee mentioned Hillsdale in his State of the State address, saying he wanted to expand a partnership with the college and bring its curriculum to charter schools here in Tennessee. TEA President Tanya Coates, in a statement put out by the group Friday, says, quote, all Tennesseans should understand Arnn's slurs were not the words of one man, but part of an organized effort to undermine confidence in Tennessee public schools. That's the only way they can siphon tax dollars into private pockets. The call to cut ties came in the same week that Governor Lee's school voucher plan got the green light to get started after a court lifted an injunction. That program was passed in 2019, but had been tangled up in court challenges until a state Supreme Court decision back in May. Tennessee Department of Education will make ASA resources available online for parents in the coming days. Governor Lee released a statement saying, we will work to help eligible parents enroll this school year as we ensure Tennessee families have the opportunity to choose the school that they believe is best for their child. It's important to point out the voucher program only covers Davidson and Shelby counties, not Knox County. But there was action last week for the county school system. Wes Cooper was there as leaders voted on new policies.
All in favor say aye. School is out, but school board members are hard at work deciding what new rules need to be in place for the upcoming year.
We always want to try to make sure that all the new laws that have gone into effect by July 1st, our policies then reflect those. So it's not uncommon.
24 new policies were on the school board's agenda. Some were approved at first reading, one of which allows teachers to return a student's confiscated phone at the end of the day instead of having a parent pick it up. Many other policies, however, need more discussion and will require a second reading.
Sometimes we need guidance from the State Department. Sometimes we need it from the State Board of Education to kind of get that. So sometimes it takes us a little while longer to update our policies to make sure we have the intent of the law.
One new policy the school board is considering, changing the 7-point grade scale to a 10-point scale.
I think it makes it easier when you think about mentally kind of knowing where your cuts are, that when you get into those odd numbers of 93s and 84s and all the different numbers that have been those kind of cuts for grade levels over time, it certainly keeps things simpler in your mind.
It's not retroactive, so it'll just be for students moving forward for this year, and so we've gotten that out to our schools, and they're ready for that, and we'll continue to communicate as the start of school to families, and it's just in our grades 6th grade through 12th grade.
Another new policy is for the school system to post current lists of materials in school library collections online. This way parents and guardians can know exactly what their child is exposed to in libraries.
One of the good things is Knox County Schools has had their library of materials in a digital format for quite a while, and so the process of moving that to an accessible list on the website for parents to be able to see that, which is really a big update in the law, is something that'll be pretty easy for us and can kind of be a live update piece that'll be available for parents to review.
More guidelines include printing crisis resource contacts on student ID cards and barring bus drivers from vaping or smoking an e-cig while transporting students. Policies that need a second reading will be up for approval at the school board's next meeting in August. In Knoxville, Wes Cooper, WATE 6 on your side.
Wes, thank you. Early voting got underway on Friday as we head into the August state primaries and county general election. And you'll see a longer ballot this time around, so keep that in mind, with choices for state, federal, and county officials.
With this election in particular, it's very important to early vote if you can, because it's a long ballot, and on election day that could hold line. We could have lines because of that reason.
Early voting will run through the 30th. Election day is August 4th, and you can find more information on the ballots on our website, WATE.com. Still to come, our panel of pundits is next as we talk about the response to the new abortion rules, inflation. And welcome back to Tennessee This Week. We're joined now by Michael Covington, Courtney Piper, and Craig Griffith. As
really good to be here.
Yep, good to see all of you. We've got a lot to talk about. We're going to start things off, though. Tennessee Democrats rolled out their plan to restore the state back to Roe v. Wade. And if that doesn't work, they're trying to put some changes to the newly allowed state abortion law. So the question is, will this work? Courtney, I'm going to start with you. Will this work?
Good. It should work because this goes along with the will and the opinion of Tennesseans. As late as May 2022, so May of this year, Vanderbilt did some polling and found that 80% of Tennesseans support completely legal or legal in some cases abortion. So Tennessee Democrats are doing the will of the people. They are siding with public opinion. There will be political fallout if this abortion law is not changed because it goes completely against what Tennesseans want. When we take away the rights of women to decide when and if they become mothers, we are making them less than human. And I don't think that is a message the state of Tennessee wants to send to women in the state.
Michael, you agree or disagree?
Partially.
Partially.
There are two areas that are being considered in this this law or this change or this provision, and the first of which shields medical doctors from prosecution for performing abortions that are not legal. That I have a problem with. I've never really had a problem with there being a provision for rape victims or incest victims to get abortions. I've never had a problem with that. But shielding physicians, I have a problem with that, and I think that should be rejected.
How about you, Craig? What do you think?
Well, I think there's little to no chance that these bills will pass through the Republican supermajority in Nashville. Actually, I think to the contrary, the legislature will probably work on laws that would ban interstate travel, that would deal with the abortion pills. So unless there is a dramatic change in the November elections that would change the makeup of the General Assembly, I don't see any of these laws proposed by the Democrats passed.
But here's the thing, Craig, when you have 80% of Tennesseans cannot agree that the sky is blue. So if these laws are not passed, if this law is not changed, there will be political fallout. 80% is an extraordinarily high number. And this is the type of issue that will rally people to the polls that don't normally vote, and will also make sure that people that kind of vote sometimes get to the polls and vote. So there will be political fallout if this law is not changed and altered.
But not enough fallout that it would change the majority. It won't change the degree of fallout will not change the supermajority in Nashville. And so what's the purpose? What's the point?
Will any ground be given up, maybe? Will the GOP give up some ground here?
Well, there is.
They need to, 80%.
I've always said for the last 2 years that the House will flip the U.S. House, not the Tennessee House, but the U.S. House will flip to Republican control in this midterm session. Now, the question is, if that doesn't happen, I would say it's a direct result of the Roe versus Wade decision. That enough people were motivated. Now, whether that carries down to the local and state level, I don't know. But it's unlikely. You may lose a supermajority, but I doubt it. But there's no way that the Republicans will lose their majority. Plus, if they get passed by the House and Senate, they'll be vetoed by the governor.
These kinds of policy decisions will have political consequences, and it might not be big enough to change in one election cycle. But here's the thing. We've got 80% of Tennesseans that think abortion should be completely legal or legal in some cases. And then we also have the GOP that has, to a certain extent, successfully sold this narrative that abortion is used only for birth control. And what we are going to find, if these laws are not changed and altered, is how deeply personal these decisions are, and how abortion is not used primarily for birth control. And it's going to create a cluster and a firestorm of other social issues that everybody is going to have to deal with. So the ramifications for not changing this will be swift and will be over a very long period of time. And Republicans will be shown as liars of this narrative that women use abortion only for the purpose of birth control.
Well, there's only one poll that matters, and that's the poll that comes out on Election Day. So we'll see if that number of people get out and vote and to change the makeup of the legislature. Otherwise, you see a lot of polls that have a majority doing this or that, and it doesn't follow through unless you actually vote.
I was going to say, Mike, let me ask you to follow up on that, because will this have an impact? Obviously, we've got an election just around the corner.
It's wishful thinking to think that voters are going to go into the ballot box and vote because of abortion. I would agree with Courtney. There may be 85% of people that think that abortion should be legal. But I guarantee you, when people go in the ballot box, they're not going to be voting about abortion. They'll have more important things to be concerned about.
Courtney, what do you think?
I disagree. Abortion is one of those hot button issues that will rally people to the polls. People feel extraordinarily strong about it on both sides of the discussion. And what we've seen over the course of the last decade or multiple decades is that people in America, in the state of Tennessee, more and more strongly support a woman's right to have access to safe and legal abortions.
We want to talk about schooling or teachers, or some comments, I guess, that have been made as of late. A lot of organizations have been calling for Governor Lee right now to denounce the comments by Hillsdale College's Larry Arnn about teachers coming from, I'm going to quote this here, the worst parts of the worst universities, and his notion that anyone can teach without specialized education. Of course, we're recording this on Thursday night, so as of right now, the governor has not denounced any of those comments. But should he apologize or distance himself from Arn in any way? Michael, I'm going to start with you on this one. What are your thoughts, first of all, on the comments? And then obviously, the governor came back and made a few comments about it, but has not actually denounced what Arn had to say. So kind of give me your take and what happens moving forward.
President Arn tried to make a joke. It wasn't a very good joke. I would imagine he got a great deal of laughter from the Republican crowd that he was speaking before. I could see how the governor, being a person of very fine education coming from Auburn University, I could see how he thought that was funny. The reality is better teachers want to teach at better schools. Marginal teachers from less than highly performing colleges and universities tend to not be very good teachers. So a teacher coming out of Wake Forest, Duke, Vanderbilt, they come to Knoxville, they're going to gravitate to Farragut, Webb, CAK, Catholic. That's just normal. That's how that works. Good teachers want to teach smart kids because they know they can teach the kids more. What Mr. Arn was saying, it was a joke that fell flat. The governor, he seems like the kind of person that stands on his own 2 feet, and he's not concerned if he ruffles some feathers. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't apologize. He didn't make the statement, and I don't see how. I don't think he feels as though he should disparage President Arn for making that statement. Would I have made that statement? No, but I may have thought similarly to how he thought. The best teachers go to the best schools, and marginal teachers come out of marginal schools.
So you said he just worded it poorly, I guess.
He worded it poorly, and he was looking for a laugh.
Yeah. Craig, let me
I would disagree with that. I think those were sincere comments that he made.
Because
I think that he and his college feel that way. And, because the governor didn't stand up at the end of his speech and make some remarks in support of the teachers in Tennessee or the colleges that teach them in Tennessee was a big political mistake on his part. And you can see that in the response of the legislators. The head of the education committee said that the plan to have 50 of those Hilldale Classic American Education charter schools in Tennessee now is shattered. So I think it's going to have long-term consequences. And the governor just didn't come out in support of, education is the biggest part of the Tennessee budget. And for him to, if he agreed with those positions that the president had, then he's got a long way to go in making Tennessee's education program any better. So yeah. I think that there's a long-term consequences to not immediately addressing this issue by the governor.
Yeah, Courtney, I want to get your thoughts because obviously we've heard from the Senate Speaker, the House Speaker. There has been quite a bit of backlash. So your thoughts as you saw this play out and you heard the comments and then the governor, kind of how he has handled this. What's your take?
I don't understand why it is so difficult for Governor Lee to denounce these comments. Bo, you mentioned that the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, both vehemently came out against these statements. And Governor Bill Lee is defending him. It is beyond my comprehension how it is not easy for him to say, I do not support those comments, period. It is very easy to say. And the fact that he's not saying it says a lot. It shows that he agrees with him. And by not coming out and saying that he disagrees with those comments and he absolutely supports teachers, he thinks that is completely untrue. It's sending a message to teachers and the education community that Governor Lee is not on their side.
Okay.
Well, it should be made clear. Every teacher that is licensed to teach is not a good teacher. And just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you should be celebrated because you're a teacher. That's why we give awards out for Teacher of the Year. All teachers aren't the same. And he was making
that's common across all workplaces.
He was making a bad joke, but the bottom line is every teacher isn't a good teacher.
Well, there's good lawyers and bad lawyers. There's good doctors and bad doctors.
Correct.
You don't say that their law schools are dumb. I think that it represented a philosophical.
If it's a bad law school, you say it's a bad law school. If it's a bad medical school, you say it's a bad medical school. That is done in every profession. Every profession.
I don't see.
And teachers are not immune from that.
a person that's trying to establish charter schools in the city, in the state, come out and say that our state colleges are dumb. That was just dumb in itself.
All right, let's stop right there on that one. We got one more topic we want to touch on here. We're running out of time for you. We want to talk about inflation. Of course, it keeps going up, but the Boyd Center economists, we spoke with them just this past week, blame several factors, not just any one thing or any one person on why we're seeing happen what is happening. So the question here is, who pays the political price in all of this? So Courtney, let me start with you.
You know, Bo, that is a tough question. Despite any evidence to the contrary, you know, just like gas prices, it's the party in power typically bears the brunt of what's happening, even though we had these compounding factors that are beyond anybody's control that is leading to where we are today with inflation. You know, I don't think there's anything that you can do to control the fallout from a global pandemic, and we are doing the best that we can to try and crawl out of it. The result of that is that we got this horrible inflation, but without the actions that were taken at the federal level, lots of people, more people stood to lose their jobs, lose their homes, lose their livelihoods. So it's like we were faced with these two very awful paths, and there wasn't really a great one to take. But, you know, I feel like the administration, the Biden administration, is doing everything in their power to try and get inflation under control. It's just, you know, the economy does not move quickly.
Craig, you agree, disagree? Should the Biden administration be held accountable here? What's your take?
It's the economy, stupid. I mean, that's the whole nutshell. When we talk about people not going to vote because of abortion, they are going because of the bread and butter issues that they see. So it's a very uphill battle for the party in power because of this inflation that we're seeing. Even though just this week, if you go to the AAA gas tracker, the cost of a gallon of gasoline has gone down 40 cents since last week. So it'll be interesting to see if there's enough of a reduction in the inflation. But I don't think there's going to be, because this is what we're having to do to bake into the economy the increase in salaries that we're having to pay. I remember it was just, you know, probably a year and a half ago, people were lobbying for $15 an hour jobs. Now, most every job is at least $15 an hour, if not more. And that new salary schedule is going to have to be baked throughout the price structure of the economy. So I think we're going to have inflation for a while. And, you know, and I think, unfortunately, Biden will probably pay the price for it.
Michael, you think about that? You kind of go along with that the Biden administration is going to take the brunt of all this?
I think the Joe Biden administration deserves the brunt of all this. I've grown weary of the crutch of COVID-19 being the cause of inflation. The bottom line is, when Donald Trump left the White House, gas prices were somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, $2.38, give or take a nickel. Now they're closer to $5. So let's just say the price of a gallon of gas has doubled in the 18 months that Joe Biden has been in the White House. This isn't complicated. This isn't a matter of COVID or fallout from COVID. This is just one of the worst presidents this country has ever seen. And I didn't think I would say that after living through Jimmy Carter. Joe Biden is the worst president we've ever had, by far. And George Bush was no prize. But Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden are the worst, and Joe Biden is the worst of the worst. There's no getting around that. He and his administration and that ineptness that is coming from the White House is the cause of most of our problems.
Courtney,
we had a president that caused an insurrection, so I see that as the worst of the worst.
That's a bunch of hype, but it's okay.
Not a bunch of hype.
It's a bunch of hype.
It happened.
And those hearings are so nonsensical. It's unbelievable that intelligent people are even participating. It is.
I'm going to let them continue talking and debating. This will be another episode ahead of Tennessee this week, I am sure. Guys, as always, Michael Covington, Courtney Piper, Craig Griffith, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all of your input, and we appreciate all of you taking a moment and spending your time with us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Bo.
Oh, thanks.
The views views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.